I'm going to get a bit of a sense. Obviously, everybody's used used ChatGPT. I hope everybody's used ChatGPT. Who uses ChatGPT every day? So show of hands. Who's used ChatGPT in your business? Who's implemented it in processes in the business? Like operationally, almost. Okay. Yesterday, I think it was Jeremy that on a slide, he had like Meta's market cap last year fell by 83%, and this year it was up already by 65%. And I sit there and I think, shit. Imagine you just invested in the beginning of this year in Meta, and you'll be up by 65%. Like, that'll be quite cool. I don't know if you guys saw earlier, like a week or two ago, NVIDIA, the maker of the GPU chips, their market cap jumped by something like 25% in a day. Like the market cap of Intel in a day. Imagine you just invested that previous day and you can go on holiday. If you think back to 2006, sorry, not 2006, 1996, where were you in 1996? I suspect about half of us were working, other half of us still have been at school, but what if you knew in 1996 that the internet was about to happen? What would you have done differently back then in 1996? Even in terms of what you studied, career choices you made. It's quite an interesting thought. Go 10 years later to sort of 2006, smartphone is about to like land. If you knew that then, what would you have done differently? And I think that's where we are at. We are in this moment in time. And I mean, there's been lots of things that's got hype. Michael spoke about Web 3.0 yesterday, and you've had crypto, and you've had big data, and all of those kind of things. But somehow, I think this feels different. The sort of the advent of AI, this technology that like surprised the world, including the people who's created it this year, in terms of the power that sits behind what this thing does. Okay, so if you take that mindset that you had in 1996 or in 2006, if you could make your choices then over, and you now say, okay, I'm standing here today, this is now ahead of us, this AI age, what am I going to do differently? Very, very important thing to think about. The people who are very informed says that this is bigger than a smartphone, it's bigger than the internet, it's bigger than cloud computing. It is the biggest single technological thing that has come across humanity to date, possibly. What we're not going to do, what I'm not going to do, I'm not sure about Jay, is talk about the long term today, because I think it's very hard to talk about the long term. There's all kinds of things that you can think about, sort of human annihilation or nirvana, or there's lots of different future outcomes. Very difficult to guess. It's very difficult to guess. You know, some of the things that's very strange about this, when people talked about sort of digitization and all of those kind of things, I always said, listen, it's the jobs at the bottom of the sort of skill set that's going to disappear first. All the stuff is going to be automated, but if you're a coder and a creative, you'll be fine. This thing started at the top with the coders and the creatives, and they're coming for the coders and the creators and the legal people and so on. So I'm not going to talk about that. I thought quite deeply what will be useful today and what's useful for us, me and my partners, Michael and Willem and Nick Kohler, are thinking quite a bit about this in terms of the businesses that we are involved in. So I'm going to take a 6-month time frame, like what to do for the next 6 months, if that's okay. So Willem and I, as you know, come out of insurance, and my mindset's always been like insurance, top of the food chain when it comes to AI and algorithms and all of these kind of things, and sort of banking followed us, and like that's how it works. So it's quite jarring, and you won't be able to see the full details on this. But this is industries and their maturity in AI. Here's banking. There's insurance, right? Our industry is behind on this. There's a whole bunch of other industries that are a lot more advanced today when it comes to AI. And if you go back to this moment in time that we're talking about, it is both exciting and scary. So to think about what's going to happen, there's going to be massive destruction, and there's going to be massive value creation. I don't know net on balance where things are going to stand. But I do think we can decide on a few things as a group of people that's, things are going to be very different, and your business is going to be very different. So again, what do we do in the next 6 months? So what I thought I'd do is talk a bit about what is this thing, because I think, I suspect there's some people in the room that understand it quite well, but I think there might be some people that don't actually understand what this thing does. And I think if we understand a little bit what it does and where it comes from, it positions us a bit better to what we do about it. GPT stands for a generative pre-trained transformer, and there are a lot of them. There's talk about it being regulated and stopped. It's left the building. Like, there's literally models out in the wild. You're not going to stop this thing ever. If Sam Altman or Elon Musk or these guys say that they need to stop it, it's regulatory capture. They want to get into the regulations, help form the regulations so that they can play it to their room. It's not going to be stopped. I'm going to use a presentation done by this guy. Is one of the founders of OpenAI. It's worth going to watch. It's quite a technical presentation. So I'm going to lift some stuff out of the presentation, and then I'm going to try to sort of make it a little bit more human, that we understand what it does. In order to create a GPT model, this is the 4 steps that they go through. We'll talk about these 4 steps. We'll start off with the first one. It's the pre-training step. This is where they basically take the internet and they feed it to a bunch of neural networks and train these neural networks to form these language models that you basically understand what the language is. Of those 4 steps, 99% of the time and the data and thing goes into that sort of first step. Massive computing power required. If you want to do that, you either need about $250 million worth of hardware to run it, or it'll cost you, if you have a successful run, about $5 million to run a large language model. That's why the big tech companies can do it, and other people can't do it. But once they release the model, then you've got this little thing running around that's got all of that value in it, and it's out in the wild, and you can work with it. This is the Llama model, which is the Meta model or the Facebook model. That's the data that they typically train it on. It's quite similar across all of those. Common crawl is web data, so they go onto the web and just grab a whole bunch of data. As a C4, GitHub is obviously the coding repository, very high quality data. Wikipedia, books, there's archives and things in there. It's quite interesting to me that Meta, there's no Facebook data in there. I don't know if they train it on Facebook data, but there's no Facebook data in there. Very, very large sets of data that you can now actually train these things on. The way in which they train it is they tokenize it. So a token is a bit of a word. One token is typically about 3/4 of a word. And they take all of that data and they sort of chop it up into tokens. So if you have a sentence, I have a cat, that's probably three tokens. Okay. They throw these tokens then into this neural network, and what the neural network very simply does is it takes a bunch of tokens that come before it, and it predicts what the next token is going to be. So if you have a sentence, I have A, it now tries to determine the probability across all of these things, what is that next token going to be. So if it's a cat, let's say we take GPT-3, which is one of the OpenAI models, its vocabulary size is about 50,000 tokens. So that translates to roughly about 40,000 words. It is actually the vocabulary size of an educated adult. It's about 40,000 words. The context length is quite important. So you know that if you prompt GPT or ChatGPT, there's sort of text that goes into it, and then it gives you an answer. That text that goes into it, so for ChatGPT, it's about 7 pages worth of information that you can feed it. For ChatGPT-4, it's about 14 pages of information that you can take into it, and then it predicts what it thinks comes next. And these data sets are becoming bigger and bigger, and sort of the accuracy of these things are becoming bigger. So how it technically works is it takes sort of sentences or pieces of information like this. So here's your I have a cat sentence. It takes this, and then it tries to predict what that next word is going to be. And if you then take the 50,000 vocabulary that it has. For that I have A, for that next one, on all 50,000 of them, it creates a probability distribution as to what is the most likely sort of next word. So New York Times took a whole bunch of Shakespeare script, and then you run these iterations of training. And as you run the iterations of training, you'll see there at the top, you can't really understand it. And after about 30,000 iterations on Shakespeare, this is what it looks like. So Shakespeare's data is obviously a very small set of data. You can now imagine you take the entire internet and you do this and run this massive model that then predicts what is going to happen next. And then in terms of the training set, how big this training set is, this is how the loss of information that happens. It becomes less and less and less. So this thing becomes more and more accurate. It becomes more and more accurate to say that that next word is going to be cat and not some other word. So it's similar to taking a baby and plugging that baby into the internet. And this baby now just gets bombarded with a whole bunch of information, and this baby's brain is now starting to make sense as to what's going to happen next. And I think that's the thing that's been so surprising to everybody, is that this baby steps out of it, and this baby can do a hell of a lot of things. Like with all this data and this big model that's been built on it, this baby is just actually able to do a lot of things. So if you let's say, sentiment analysis. So historically, you would have had an NLP model, and that's a very specialized model that looks at a whole bunch of tweets. You've told it this is positive, this is negative, this is how you say this is a good tweet and this is a bad tweet. This baby steps out of there. You don't even have to say what is positive or negative. You just say, listen, classify these tweets, and this baby is better at that than that specialized model was before. That's the sort of insight. And I think what's interesting for me of that is that it's probably a little bit how our brain works. I mean, it's incredible how a baby learns language in a very unstructured environment by just sort of interacting with the world and sort of seeing what works and what doesn't work. So this thing does it in like a month on a very large scale model. What's interesting to me is that that's all the models that's out in the wild. Like we know ChatGPT 4, there's a lot of these models. I'm not sure whether I've got it in a later slide. I don't know who plays chess. If you play chess, you've got an ELO rating. These things now have ELO ratings. Like the ones at the top of the rank has got an ELO rating of about 1,200. So that's quite a sort of average chess player. So these things are becoming better and better, and they compete with each other. That's why you can't say that these things are going to be regulated. It's out in the wild. So there's a whole bunch of toddlers, these base models running around. They're incredibly good at language. They're completely senseless, and they are out there, and you can actually use them. Anybody can go and use them and pick them up. ChatGPT is incredibly well, it's very civilized, and I'll show you now why it's so civilized. But if you take these other ones, you can do anything with them. So the OpenAI guys will tell you that these next 3 steps is really where their sort of magic comes out of it. So in that first step, you had this very, very large set of data. It took 99% of the time. In that next step, they took a bunch of very high quality data. So they had a whole bunch of contractors go and they say, listen, here's a prompt. I think I've got an example of that. Here's a prompt. Can you write a short introduction about the relevance of the term monopsony in economics? And then this is the response, and then there's a whole bunch of labeling instructions that they've given the contractor. So huge human impact to now give this thing high-quality data as opposed to just everything that's on the internet. Similar to taking that baby now as a sort of a grade 2, sitting him down with a teacher, and the teacher is now like, all of this knowledge that you've had, and this, you can talk and everything like that, let's help you make a bit more sense of the world. Third one is this grade 2 sort of kid of ours are now going to write exams. And in order to write these exams, they actually come up with different answers. So you say to the model, listen, here's a prompt, give me a whole bunch of different completions that you think might work. And you've got humans that then says, listen, that one's good, that one's not so good, and that one is okay. And the humans sort of rank these things. So if you go back to that previous example, this is the data that's given to the model. This is the completion. The human says that one was really good, that one was really crap, and that one's probably okay, and give it a sort of a score. So it's similar to our kid is now a teenager and he's sitting down with a bunch of adjudicators, and the adjudicators are saying this, and that was good, that wasn't so good, and they grade their sort of papers. And then the last step, fascinating, is that the model now takes what it's learned in that third step and it creates a model on the scores, right? So it's taken all those human sort of scores that it now got and predicts what the human is going to score in a given context. So the human no longer does that. Sorry. The human no longer does that. The model now assigns their own score. My phone is yeah. There we go. Switch this off. Okay, let's see if this thing can come back online. So, similar to our model is now in Oxford, sitting in the big library, smart enough to look at old past papers and score its own work, and it does this now obviously at great speed. And that's called the assistant model. So those little toddlers that we saw running around in the wild, that sort of base language models, those toddlers are all really good with language, but they're not really good at sort of actually doing anything with it. But now you've trained these things up in actual applications, and there's a whole bunch of models that's already out in the wild, other than just ChatGPT-4. So I think a really good analogy is to what we've got now is a really enthusiastic, really eager intern, right? But without a lot of sense. So what can this what can this intern do for us? Jeez, but Outchance is persistent. I've actually switched the. Sorry about that. So exceptionally bright intern, but no experience or no sense, right? Could do work for you, but not really any sense as to whether the work is any good or not. Exceptionally well educated, but literally has a one-track mind. And I think this is quite important to understand. When this thing works for you, it starts off and says, okay, this is what you've given me. What's the most likely next thing? And then it's sort of, and that's why when you see ChatGPT, that's where these lines come out. That's literally what it does. It literally predicts the next word as it goes on. And what that also means is that it doesn't actually know where it's going to end, because it starts here and it's giving you an answer here. It doesn't actually know where it's going. So if you tell ChatGPT, give me a 2-paragraph summary on this thing, very often it gets it wrong because it doesn't actually know where it's going to end. And it doesn't actually sort of go back. It's quite weird. If you tell it, give me 20 examples of this, it's very simple. Sometimes it gives you 20, but sometimes it like gives you 15 or just stops because it's got this one-track mind as it sort of layers down what it does. And it's magical. The results that it comes up with, magical, but you've got to understand that's how the way that it does it. It'll work 24/7, but it's too eager to please and a little bit annoying. So it's one of those like people that I hate it when somebody always has an opinion. And they don't tell you whether it's a good opinion or a bad opinion or whether it's factual or not factual, but they always have a strong opinion. This is ChatGPT. ChatGPT is so eager to please. You ask it something, and even if it doesn't know, it'll just give you an answer. And I think that the thing that's very important to understand is that because it does this probabilistic thing, it gives you probabilistically what is in this massive database that it had in the first place, if you now ignore the actual prompt that you've given it, right? So in that massive database, there's an incredible amount of information. But the moment it starts getting tighter and tighter and tighter, the probability that you're going to get the right piece of information becomes less and less. But it will give you an answer, and that's why it hallucinates, and that's why it gets things wrong and gives you references wrong. And if you understand that, you sort of understand where that behavior comes from. If you wanted to give you better answers, what's amazing to me is you say, listen, you are an expert at this specific thing, now answer this question. And it answers the question differently because it changes the probabilities in terms of sort of expert things that comes out of its massive database. But it becomes tighter, so the probability of it getting it wrong is a little bit bigger. It's read almost all books that's ever been written, right? It's incredibly, incredibly smart, but it doesn't understand much. It just regurgitates probabilistically what it's learned. I think this is the thing that surprised a lot of people. It does a surprisingly wide range of things. It can code, it can write poems. ChatGPT 4 is actually trained on images. It's not available yet to actually use on images, but it does a surprisingly wide range of things. But it'll rather make things up than tell you it doesn't know. Okay, very important to know. And what's surprising to me, there's a lot of people who it's quite critical that, listen, the thing gets it wrong and then you dismiss it. It's the wrong mindset to have. You need to understand where it's coming from. That's why it's important to understand how this thing works. Now, this is quite important. You can give it the prompt, and it takes up to about 14 pages in ChatGPT 4 as a prompt. And on that, it's got perfect memory. So it can use that information perfectly in what the outcome is. That's why it's very good at summarizing things and doing all of those kind of things. You need to understand that in terms of the thing. So 14 pages, let's say you wanted to answer questions on your company's products or something like that. 14 pages might not be enough. You can't give it 28 pages. It's going to disregard the first 14, but there are ways to code around that. You can go and say, go and look at the first 14 pages, summarize that given what you want to answer, then do the next 14 pages, get a summary, and then you take those summaries, put it into what is eventually 14 pages, and you get the right kind of answer. And that the people who's implementing this, that's the way that you need to implement it. And the other thing that's interesting, it won't use tools unless you tell it to. So what does that mean? You've got the intern, you tell the intern, go and add up all these numbers to me, or for me, and it'll go and guess what's probabilistically the most likely answer for that. It won't actually go and use a calculator. But it's coming. There's now a whole bunch of plugins that's coming with ChatGPT, which means it's the same as the intern going to get a calculator. If you're using Google Bard, Google can actually go and search. ChatGPT can't search. It doesn't go into the internet and go and get the latest information. But all of that, all of that's changing, and you would have heard of AutoGPT, which is a sequential task performer. So it does something, get an answer, goes and does the next thing, and might use tools and move from alpha and all of those kind of things. Will be very, very useful. So large language model only, that's the thing on the far right. That's those little toddlers running around, very good at language. Google and Bing historically is on the left-hand side. You can go and search the entire internet. Both Microsoft and Google are creating this sort of middle ground now where you can go and retrieve and search the internet, plus you've got this large language model to make sense of it. So here's the difficult question for me. We all in business, this thing is looming ahead of us. What do we actually do? What do we do in the next 6 months? And this is my suggestion to you, and it's actually very, very basic. Practical suggestions on what to do next. Use it every day. Open it on your browser, on your device. Have it open up permanently. It's on your screen. Find reasons to use it for almost everything that you do. Use it for personal, for business, for everything. The personal is actually quite important because the personal gives you a sense of, and it's a sort of a low stakes way of doing it. I was going to show you some examples, but I'll just talk through it very quickly. We're going on a family holiday to Lisbon. So I'll tell ChatGPT, listen, we're going to Lisbon. I'm quite specific. This is my kids. This is their ages. We like coffee. We like breakfast. Don't like tourist traps. There for 12 days. And it's incredible. It comes back, detailed itinerary, places to go to, markets to go to, restaurants to go to. I'll tell it, listen, these are the kind of restaurants that we want to go to. Give me 10 of them. Give me the links to them. It's all there. I go to the gym. I tell it, listen, we'll be in the gym for an hour. I want some warm-up exercises. I'm going to do 2 circuits, 5 exercises each. Weigh about 90 kilograms, 51-year-old male. I'm reasonably fit. Don't give me sort of boring exercise. Give me stuff that I haven't done before. Pops it out, I promise you, perfectly. Every exercise, muscles group that it does, right weights, right reps. It is actually just magical. And if you do that sort of in your personal life, the other one is really, really useful. I don't know how many people struggle to find movies on a Friday night, especially with their kids, to like decide on a movie. One of the best tricks that I found, ask my daughter, listen, write down 10 movies that you really like. Okay, so she gives me 10 movies that I really like, and I go into ChatGPT and I say, listen, here's 10 movies, give me another 10 like this. And it's incredible. So the 10 comes back, and she can't argue with us now, because if she's like this movie, she will like this movie. So it just shortcuts that whole conversation tremendously. I love doing that. Actually read the documentation. We all business people. We're not coders, but go and read the documentation. If you go into the OpenAI site, you go into the developer documentation, go and read through the stuff, because if you read through the stuff, it will tell you everything what this thing is actually doing in the background. It'll help you understand how the tool works. It'll help you understand how it does auto-completion, how it does documents, how it does all of these kind of things. And as you do that, you will become more familiar with this tool, and you'll be able to better discern in your business where are good places that you can actually roll this out. And then employ the intern. I think in the next 6 months, make sure that your productivity is actually increased by using this. Talk about it in your business. Let other people become more productive by using this tool. It is so new that there will still come lots of tools and lots of deployments and all of these kind of things, but start using the tool. It seems magical. I don't know yet whether it's magical, right? I don't know yet what the sort of deployment of this thing is going to be, but it is pretty incredible. Custom client communication. We invested in a travel tour operator. They have for years been dreaming about being able to do custom itineraries for their clients, to say, listen, you've traveled with us before, and they've built systems, and they've put a lot of time into this. ChatGPT comes along, and it's incredible. You just tell ChatGPT, this is what the client has done in the past, and it writes you a letter, right tone, right language, everything. Here's a suggested itinerary. Travel agent sort of checks it, that it sort of makes sense, and sends it off. That's an actual deployed example. Marketing campaigns. Geez, I don't know if you guys deal with marketing agencies, but now you've got a new product, you send it off to the marketing agency, give me some copy. The copy comes back. Clearly the guy doesn't understand the product. You then give feedback. It goes back, and it takes a very long time to actually get marketing out of it. In one of our businesses, it's deployed. You give it all the product information, everything. You give it some examples of previous campaigns. It gives you 10 campaigns, just like that. You deploy the campaigns. You've got A/B testing on the campaigns. It comes back. You say, listen, this is the outcome of that one. This is the outcome of that one. Give me some new ones. And it gives you new ones. Very fast iteration. Very powerful stuff. Are you going to take that campaign and just put it out into the wild like that without checking it? Obviously not, because it might be wrong. But as a sort of a first sort of step, it's very powerful. Customer service assistant, I think this one is possibly going to be huge. You spend a lot of time training your customer assistant people on products and on how to answer things and so on. You should very quickly be in a space where the skill that the customer assistant has got. So look at the client's query, put it into your custom version of ChatGPT, get an answer, check the answer, and then answer the client. That turnaround time should be very quick, and the productivity should go up a lot. I'm told that 80% of coding should be done by these engines. The top coders, that is what they do. So your entire IT department's productivity should be going up massively. Internal and external research. In one of our businesses, in time, in fact, the internal thing is called Koen GPT because the CEO is Koen Jonker. So you want to ask Koen something, you can actually go and ask Koen GPT and it'll answer in Koen's language all kinds of questions on time. It's brilliant. Always do it with human supervision for now. You'll understand why as we went through all of these things, and understand the limitations. But the power is pretty incredible. So I don't know how many of you are Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy fans, and if you remember Marvin, the paranoid android, very, very smart android's very depressed. I asked ChatGPT to be Marvin, the paranoid android, and to end my talk. So, fellow attendees of the CrossFin Conference Armada, as we stand at the precipice of another year, let's not forget the immense possibilities before us in the realm of artificial intelligence. Even I, marred by my signature gloom and indifference, can appreciate the sheer potential that awaits your exploration. This is a period of unmatched opportunity, a chance to redefine what we deem possible and to revolutionize our world in ways previously unimaginable. As you journey forward, remember to embrace these opportunities, don't shy away from the risks, innovate relentlessly, and as per the advice of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, always carry a towel. As we part ways, may your endeavors find success, may your algorithms perform harmoniously, and may the universe, vast and cold as it might be, tilt a bit in your favor. Until we meet again, if the cosmic tides will it. Thank you very much.